Good afternoon, my name is Oliver Fitton and I'm an MA student here at Lancaster University. I study international relations and I focus on the cyber dimension of human conflict. Today I'm going to be speaking, this is a little bit different to the other stuff we've had before. Today I'm going to be speaking about the Syrian conflict and the increasing potential that the cyber dimension to conflicts has on international security. I've only got about 5 minutes, but hopefully in that time I can demonstrate that there's a great deal that can be gained by looking at cybersecurity from this kind of point of view. So first of all, apologies, but a little bit of a politics lecture. The Syrian conflict is directly related to the Arab Spring, which started in 2011 in Tunisia. It was stimulated by poor living conditions, lack of political freedom and corruption throughout the region, and it spread very quickly across the Middle East and North Africa. It landed in Syria in April 2011. In the city of Homs, there were 100,000 people out on the streets protesting, calling for the resignation of Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, who you can see there. He's been president in Syria since the year 2000, and before that his father had been president of Syria since 1971. It's been categorised continually as an authoritarian regime, and to emphasise that, the Economist Democracy Index in 2010, before the conflict, ranked Syria 152nd out of 167 of the most free countries on the planet, and then during the conflict in 2012 that ranking dropped to 164th out of 167. They scored 0 for both electoral process and civil liberties. Now that kind of statistic is a representation of how bad the situation is in Syria at the moment. It's dropped further. Basically, it's a dirty civil war that's going on there at the moment, with a massive human cost. There's the potential that chemical weapons are being used on both sides, including the rebels, and we don't really know who the rebels properly are. The UN released figures last month suggesting that 93,000 people had died as a direct influence, as a direct factor of this conflict. So obviously there's a lot of a very interesting physical situation going on there, and a horrifying situation as well. I'm interested primarily in the cyber aspect of this, and the most interesting cyber aspect is, I think, the Syrian Electronic Army. They developed originally in early 2011 on Facebook as a pro-Assad Facebook group and organisation. They're essentially a bunch of youths who are particularly talented, both technically and in the social engineering aspects of hacking. As the conflict escalated, so did the SEA's activities. Like I say, they began as Facebook groups and also on comments, so any comments that were put out officially by people like the White House, they would go on there and they would hijack the comments and put pro-Assad propaganda on there. Their MO is basically retribution attacks against organisations that they see as being pro-Assad, and they generally use a spear phishing kind of technique to then crack accounts, and then it's usually website defacements and Twitter hacks. The most high-profile versions of these have been against The Onion, the Financial Times, and recently Sky Apps on the Google Play Store. But I want to look at the relationship between Assad and the SEA is a particularly interesting one. It's difficult that nobody really knows what the exact relationship is because there's no official spokesman for the SEA. But Assad has continually suggested that he supports the SEA, but then at the same time he turns off the internet, stopping them functioning. His brother actually bankrolls them, which is useful, but useful for them, but at the same time there's more and more evidence that that relationship is becoming more fractious. So I want to focus on one particular attack that happened recently. This was in April, and this was the attack on the Associated Press Twitter account. They released this tweet: "Don't worry, there were actually no explosions and Obama is fine." But they managed to crack into the account, release this tweet, and almost instantaneously the Associated Press found it, deleted it, end of it. Only problem is damage had already been done. Instantly, the Dow Jones dropped 143 points. This wasn't because traders were sat there on Twitter when they should have been trading. This was because of algorithmic trading, which is a type of software which scans news feeds and scans social media, and depending on what it reads, automatically trades depending on what it thinks that the kind of trends are in the market. So without any human input at all, we had a loss of money here. So it's quite interesting that we have an organisation that's come out of a conflict in Syria, and because of a series of events, people in America have essentially lost money, or companies in America have essentially lost money. So that's quite interesting. I don't want to overstate what's happened here though, because you can see from this graph that recovery happened pretty much instantaneously. But at the same time, there are some interesting conclusions that we can pull out of this. First of all, that something that we always see, this cyber mischief has unexpected consequences. In this Internet of Things that we've just been talking about, very minor things can have quite a large impact. But more interestingly for me, especially from an international relations point of view, and a strategic point of view, is that these kind of non-Western models of asset development are clearly developing. So what I mean by that is that the Syrian Electronic Army clearly isn't GCHQ, and it also isn't a mercenary organisation, and at the same time it's very much not anonymous. It has a very different ethos to anonymous. So what my research will end up looking at is the potential for these a kind of new evolutionary branch of cybersecurity, developing out of diverse human conflict and innovating accordingly so that they can survive. And that's me. Thank you.